call the meeting to order for September 3rd, 2025 at 6 o'clock. We're at the MRUSD Central Office. And first item is to review the agenda. So a couple of things. There is a minor correction on item 7B. It says policy first reading. That should say second reading. I see that as a typo, but if anybody doesn't see it as a typo and wants us to bring it for the next meeting, I'm happy to do that because we're under the 48-hour rule for changing. But if I reviewed the minutes and we had the first reading at the last meeting, so this would be the second meeting. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to do is move item 8B, the Franklin County School Configuration section, up to where 7A, with 7A, I guess, because it will help. Actually, if we do 8B first, it will help inform 7A and B. So, does anybody have any objections with that?
No.
Okay, so going to accept the agenda as noted. Changed. Has changed. Okay, next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. All right, next section of our agenda is the visitors section. Are there any visitors here that would like to speak? No. Aaron, are there any visitors online that would like to speak?
I just posted.
Or Megan.
We do have one visitor, but they haven't said that they want to speak yet. But like I said, I just posted.
Okay. Are they up here?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, if you're attending remotely and want to speak, you need to type your full name into the comment area. And seeing none, we're going to skip over to the visitor section, unless our one visitor online wants to speak. I'm not seeing that. Okay. So the consent agenda is item 5. If anybody has anything they'd like to pull out, this is the time to discuss it. I actually have one thing. It's the minutes, page 1, line 14. Has Megan's last name, has Doobie instead of Ruby. I think it's Mary Ann's last name.
Yep.
So we can accept the consent agenda with that correction. All right, reports to the board.
Unless you want to pay me.
What's that? Say it again?
I can take Megan's salary.
Okay, well, I think you have to go before the court to do that, but go ahead.
We'll talk.
Okay.
No.
Okay, student board rep report. We have Jacoby here and another young lady. Remind me of your name.
Ellie Tremblay.
Hi, Ellie, I'm Nelda. And I don't know who's going to speak, but you're on.
Yeah, thank you. I will start. So I just wanted to first kind of let everybody know, give everybody this opportunity. So the Vermont Learners Association is a new nonprofit comprised of students across the state of Vermont. Our organization is slowly expanding, and we began as a group of just student school board members, and I am their association's elected director of partnerships. And now we're expanding into all kinds of students. We have student leaders from around the state of Vermont, and our lead team, I think, is 10 different students representing, I think, 7 different schools, which is really cool, all from geographically significant areas around Vermont. And our mission is to understand and amplify the voices of Vermont students. So some of our goals is to work as, like, you all get the Vermont School Boards Association, so our, like, newsletters and everything. So our goal is to do that for the student school board members of Vermont and to lobby and increase rights for student school board members and for students around the state. So we're going to do this in a couple of ways by updating students and families on education changes with comprehensive and digestible language. So that already needs to change. One of the ways we will do that is via our newsletter, giving presentations in as many schools as possible about like the the funding and how that's actually going to impact students, instead of just allowing rumors to float around. Advocating and representing students at our state house, working with legislators and senators on advocating and keeping student reps on school boards as we move into this education transformation. And so we're working on building a mailing list for our newsletter so that we can spread our message to as many people as possible. So if you're interested in this, or if you're interested in supporting us in any capacity, please let me know, and I will take your email down. If you have any questions or ideas, you can email me. My email, I think you can just type in like Jacoby Soder, and then I'm the only one, so it'll show up. Yeah, and if you're interested, you can email me and you can say, put my name on the email list, or you can ask me a couple of questions, and I'll be happy to answer them or get you on the email list. So thank you all.
Thank you.
So SVC is like back up and running in the school. We've had our first like informal meeting. And we're gonna start thinking about this year at a glance and start brainstorming project ideas. Yeah.
Great. Welcome. Any questions for our students? Okay, moving on to old business. So, I had requested that we move item 8B, Franklin County School configurations up so that we can make sure that we are re-informed of the differences between supervisory unions and school districts and the other one. What's the other one? Is there-
Supervising unions.
I said that. And school districts, well, whatever, I guess I said them all. So we have a handout in our packet, and it is attachment 8B, and Bill is going to talk us through that configuration.
Yeah, we had talked about bringing this into the education session, and I didn't know how to do more of an update. I thought having this in front of us first about the different governance structures and what does Franklin County look like would be the best way to kind of get into Act 454 and Act 73, I should say, House Bill 454. So there's a color map that either you're looking at on your computer or you have in your paper handout that looks like this. Okay, and I thought that was the best way to really kind of start was talk about, and the way of thinking about it is a school district is governed by one board. Okay, so on here, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think if I want to make count it right, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 7 school districts. So Maple Run, we're a school district of 3 towns, municipalities. We have the city, the town, and Fairfield. But if you look to our south, Franklin West is a supervisory union that has 3 school districts within it. So it has the school district of Fletcher, the school district of Fairfax, and the Georgia School District. They each have school boards that govern them, and then they come together to make a supervisory union board. Okay? When you look at to the north of us, Missisquoi Valley School District services those 3 towns of Highgate, Franklin, and Swanton. They have one school board. They have the elementary schools of each of those towns, and then Missisquoi Valley Union High School. And then for Franklin Northeast, it has 2 school districts. One that's Enosburg, Richford, and I might not get the names of the districts correct, so I
apologize if I didn't. But they're a K-12 district. So they provide, I should say pre-K-12, they provide education from pre-K to 12 in the Enosburg schools and in the Richford schools. And then Berkshire, Montgomery, Bakersfield, and Sheldon are pre-K-8 schools. So they run a pre-K-8 school in each of their towns, but they do not have they have not identified a high school that they send their kids to. So they can pay school tuition for where their kids can go. And so, and Joanna, jump in here with anything, because
They're considered to be a side-by-side.
Yeah, they're side by side. And so that makes up, there are two school districts within Franklin Northeast that make up the Franklin Northeast Supervisory Union. And those school districts send representatives to the Supervisory Union Board. Yeah.
The only thing that I would add is that Sheldon was a part of Franklin. Before it became the Missisquoi Valley School District, it was Franklin Northwest.
Yeah.
And then with consolidation, Sheldon wanted to remain on its own, and they got, kind of kicked out, basically, of Franklin Northwest, which then became Missisquoi Valley because they were the only K-8 school. So their K-6s, pre-K through 6, excuse me, in the other smaller towns, but nobody had a K-8. So they thought that it would make more sense for them to go into the side-by-side with the other K-8 schools.
Yeah, it was a forced
merger. Yeah,
and one of the things with Act 46 that created these mergers talked about, which is not in the current reform bill, is that it was to keep like structures together. In the current education reform bill, there's no consideration around structures. So it's about, that's one of the things that Act 46 had in it, was like, you couldn't force a structure to change within a school district. So, and the delivery structure, I should say, delivery of education. So, I don't know if there's any questions on it that help define the governance terms. I also took from the Essentials book the vocabulary of some of the governance terms, but the big ones are that difference between what's a school district and what's a supervisory union. That was the big question I took away from the last meeting, but glad to answer any questions here.
Any chance, and if you don't, I can go look myself, do you know the populations of each of these?
I actually wrote that on this little sheet right before I came here. So, in Franklin Northwest, if you want to get a pen. So there's a total of 8,011. This is last year's student count. I'm going to give you this year's later on from Maple Run, but I took this out of our phone book that actually for all the supervisory in our directory. So these are last year's student counts. In all of Franklin County for last year, and these are rough numbers, okay, so take them as rough.
Sure.
There were 8,011 students.
All of Franklin County.
All of Franklin County, 8,011 students. And then I'm going to give you by supervisory union or school district, and then if you want more, you can let me know. So for all Franklin Northeast, there are 1,938 students. For Missisquoi Valley, 1,805 students. For Maple Run, 2,534 students. And for Franklin West, 1,734. And why is that important? Those are some important numbers to know. And I think, I don't know if you were going here or not, Joanna, but in Act 73, in the legislation for the task given to the redistricting task force, they want districts that are between 4,000 and 8,000.
What was that number for Franklin West?
Franklin West was 1,734.
What was the first one, Franklin Northeast?
Franklin Northeast was 1,938.
1,938?
Yep.
Thank you.
So when you look at this,
That's pre-K through,
that's pre-K through 12,
All students.
all students. We have around 8,000 for the Franklin County. The one I didn't give you, which I don't have with me, but I can bring you later, is Grand Isle numbers. And why is that important? Alberg is really seen as part of Franklin County, where the Southern Island districts, not so much. And when we work together, in counties, the superintendent from Grand Isle always works with Franklin County. As I said, in the legislation for the redistricting task force that we're going to talk about in a minute, they were in the legislation given a task to create supervisory unions or school districts that were between 4,000 and 8,000. That doesn't really have, the only close anchor it has in research about best practices for most efficient for the highest student performance is that there's two different analysis. One says 4,000, one says 6,000 on school districts for optimal size, for optimal economic performance, for optimal student achievement. And so it's somewhere in that 4,000 to 6,000 range. So I know that because that was part of what I testified to the Senate and the House when I was testifying last year. It was about class size, school size, and district size, about what research says. So that's where those numbers come in. Other questions about Franklin County makeup? I can send you, I have it on my sheet, I wrote it down, but I don't know if it's worth the time to go into every school in the county, but that's what we have right now. We have 5 high schools. I think you all know that, but it's just a good thing.
What are the puzzle pieces in Richford and Enosburg?
Oh, those are villages.
I think that's like Enosburg Falls.
Yeah, Enosburg
Right.
Falls, and then Richford has a village determination. Just like we do.
St. Albans City.
St. Albans
I got-
City is its
I got
own
that one,
municipality.
Yeah.
It's a municipality.
Yeah.
And the village, Swanton Village.
Swanton has a village, yeah.
So I guess my question is like, so the likelihood is that like Franklin County would probably become its own school district? Or?
If they were gonna go up to the large size.
Yeah,
Or somehow Franklin County is gonna get split in two.
right.
And Alberg's probably gonna come with it.
Yeah.
Because most of the Alberg students either go to Champlain or Plattsburgh, New York for high school, or come to Missisquoi or BFA.
And Milton for that matter too, you know.
A lot of the southern, I don't know about Alberg so much.
I was just saying Milton, they are contained.
Yeah.
So they could go north
They
or
could go
south.
either way. That's actually one of the things we talked about is, you know, you have to think about, I mean, you look at the task force website, which they have a website for the task force, and it's getting better. But one of the things they've been taught, they made, I think, 12 different points that are in the legislation. Not 11 of the 12 are in the legislation for them to consider when making the maps. The one they added was community input, but that's not in the legislation. So the committee's actually split on whether they should be taking community input or not, because it wasn't written into the legislation to do so. And it's a good call, because they're the way Act 73 was written for the redistricting task force, they have a very tight bound of what they're supposed to do. They're not like a legislative committee that can design how they want to go and do their work. So that's what's done in the legislative. Other questions about Franklin County and our governance makeup? Or like one of the things I don't know is like how, I can go get it, but I don't have it with me. It's like size of boards and things like that. Okay. Any, in the VSBA handout that we added in here, there's other terms in here. I didn't think I needed to go over them, but if you look at anything from state board to Secretary of Education to agency to supervisory union or school boards, when you look at any of those terms, are there any that you would like me to talk more about that are a little confusing?
I have one.
Yeah.
So, Department of Education versus the Board of Education? No.
Yeah, so it's an agency of education now. It used to be the department. Yeah.
Agency. So I read that, and I understand what it said, but can you talk to us a little bit more about any other distinction?
So the state board's role and power and governance has really changed since it used to be the Department of Education, and the state board, this Department of Education was more accountable to the State Board of Education until it flipped. And I don't remember how many years ago, I know it was two secretaries ago, or our third secretary. I want to say it was around 10 years ago when it became an agency. What's it mean to become an agency versus a department? An agency means it's under the control of the governor. So the agency answers to the governor more than it does the State Board of Education. The State Board still has some authority, but it's far less than it was when it was a department. So the then commissioner would be more like my role, answering to you as a board, and that's what they did, to where the now secretary answers to the governor, and not so much to the board. There are in statute roles that the Board of Education has, but it's really been whittled down since it became an agency. They do a lot of rulemaking. They have a lot of authority on what we call the district quality standards, the education quality standards. That's where they have their authority. And so they can make a lot of rules. But when it comes to day-to-day operations or what the agency decides to do, that really comes underneath the governor's direction through the secretary. Does that help?
Yep.
So when I looked up Albert,
Yeah.
it said 203 students. Are they just, I'm having a hard time.
That seems, that may be just the school and not the overall district.
That was my question.
Yeah, that might be part of the problem.
Do you want me to say?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Albert School District operates a pre-K3 building, and 200 is actually a little bit high based off of the last couple of years of enrollment, but I actually think they might be around there again. So 200 pre-K3.
With pre-K3, yeah. Yeah, the numbers I would have for, the numbers I gave you didn't include, like, for the, is it called the Mountain Valley, the Berkshire Sheldon?
Yeah,
Bakersfield,
Mountain Valley.
Mountain Valley. The numbers I gave you there, they wouldn't show those. I gave you enrollment numbers, so I don't have the tuition numbers built into those numbers for those kids that are moving. Or for Georgia, when I said 602, that's at the pre-K8. It doesn't include their tuition kids going to other high schools, or Fletcher's after 6th grade. So those are the numbers. That's how we want to get. That's why I say these are rough. I took it from the directory that had enrollment. It doesn't tell me the tuition numbers, and actually what you want to have is the average daily membership, because it's who's paying the bills. But it gives you a rough idea.
Okay. So
I think that gives us like the.
tying it back to the Vermont Education.
That's where I would go next to,
Okay.
right? Is in Vermont Education.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna, and Nilda and I were talking about this, and this might be something we talk about now. We have our education session, and you have time for more questions and more of a presentation on this in a week from next Monday. But I sent you, you all asked for some more detailed, and I probably sent way too much, but I sent you a bunch of different references. I really think 7 days and 7 days is probably doing the best job of keeping up with what's going on. I think they're doing it, in my professional opinion from watching this. Digger's pretty close, but I think 7 days is really on it. So in the education transformation, there was I talked about the task force, and the task force has 11 members on it. I think it was the update that came yesterday. From the Vermont School Board, there's a link in there right on the top from the weekly update that has the task force website on it. It's getting better. They do have video, it's through Microsoft Teams, but then they have a recording afterwards. Their minutes have gotten better in the second meeting than the first. I don't know if that's maybe just because it was a longer meeting, but I seem to get more out of their minutes. And they have the public comment that is submitted up there. 16, I counted today, there were 16 school districts of the 120 in the state that had given public testimony to the task force. So the task force has to come up with 3 maps, 3 alternative maps. One of them must have supervisory unions in it. Doesn't have to be completely supervisory, but it has to have some supervisory unions in it. It has 3 House members, 3 Senate members, and 5 outside of House or Senate members that were appointed by the governor, by the House, and by the Senate. The Senate had 2, the House had 2, and the governor had 1. And all educational officials, either school board members, business managers, or former superintendents. So there are 3 former superintendents on it, a business official, and a school board member. They have to produce these maps by December 1st, and it'll cease to exist next June. And they give the 3 maps to the legislature, and the legislature can follow one of them or make up their own. So that's kind of how that is working. They're meeting about twice a month right now. I know they have an RFP to have someone come in and help them facilitate their own meetings. And there's an RFP out with the Commission on the Future of Education to do, I think, 2 or 3 public engagement opportunities for the task force. And what I saw is earlier today that might be happening in the Northeast Kingdom, somewhere in Montpelier, and somewhere down south. But that was it. I read that in minutes, so that could change.
I listened to the NPR.
Yeah.
There's several different NPR programs about it, and where they interviewed 2 of the people. I think it was Rebecca Holcomb and maybe Jamie or Jeff.
Yeah.
And I had one question that I didn't fully understand something. Rebecca Holcomb was talking about special education and how special education has changed, but the impact that this process will potentially have on special education. And she was saying that she was talking about the difference between educating students within your supervisory union who have high needs and then sending them out. And she really talked about it in a way that I had never heard before. And she basically thought that it was, how do I describe that? That it was potentially more fiscally beneficial to put them out, send them out of school, out of your school district, rather than keeping them in terms of how the money is going to be potentially dispersed to the state. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I haven't heard her comment on it, so I wouldn't know what she was talking to, but I would be glad to look into what she said. There has been a lot of school districts, we're not the only ones doing what we're doing because we're finding it fiscally responsible to do it.
And she talked about that, but then she was just saying, and if I heard it wrong, I'm open to that.
Yeah.
I believe I heard her say something along the lines of that because of the way how they intend to disperse money to the state, federal money, right, for a special education, that it may not necessarily be advantageous to provide it all within your school district.
Yeah, I definitely
So
know
I was
the details
really
of what she was talking about. Yeah.
confused by that. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll get the details.
down where she lives and represents, there's a whole consortium of 13 districts that come
Yep.
together to provide their own, what we've done, we've been big enough to do ourselves, because we have enough population, to come together to form collaborative special ed services. across district lines right now. And that's where, I mean, she's the one who sponsored the BOCES bill to try to help do that. So the task force, so that's the task force work. The other big pieces of the bill are school district voting board working group. So that's starting here in December, where how would they choose the makeup of the board and how big would the wards be for voting based on population. And it has to meet the, so that's going through the Secretary of State, and they would start to have, once they know the boundaries from the task force, they would start to say, or at least see the 3 alternatives, how would they start to allot voting districts for school board members. The other big, there's a couple more big things I want to touch on. There were class size minimums that they did for grade 1 in kindergarten. Class size is a minimum of 10, 2 through 5, 12, 6 through 8, 15, and 9 through 12, 18. And that you can't have a multi-graded classroom that's more than 2 grade levels. I used to work in districts where we had 3 or 4 in one classroom.
Would that include like high school?
Yeah, that high school.
So like, my French 1 is, we have all 4 grade levels.
Yeah, oh, I don't think it was intended for that. I think it was more in the elementary. I'd have to look at the actual, what it says in the
K1,
legislation.
2.
I think it was looking at K1.
Yeah, I understand that for sure,
Yeah.
but I was a little like, that was limiting.
They also had carve-outs for different types of classes that might need to go below. It made, when I read it, I'm not gonna list all the different types, but it was really reasonable for different types where you might have less. And it had a waiver where you can go around it. It sets that on January 1st, 2026, there will be statewide graduation requirements. And I'm actually I want to just give you where I am on some of these things. I'm very much in favor of that. Having worked in many different high schools, that a diploma in one school does not have the same equity as what it has in another school.
Yes.
So I think it's a place Vermont needs to go, and many states have done this. A statewide school calendar for the FY28 school year. This year, the superintendents, we don't have it exactly to the day, but we have all the major holidays in Vermont for the first time ever in alignment. So that the major vacations is not holiday. It also talks about having one statewide financial and student information system, consolidate that down. We've been down that road before, so we'll see where that goes. It starts construction aid, but with no funding, so we need to bring back school construction aid and a way to do that. It also, go ahead.
Just to get my head around having construction aid with no money, is that basically just a placeholder saying money goes here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and if money's appropriated for that, so.
Yeah.
But it was suspended, so it wasn't there, so it's actually bringing it back. It talks, then there's a whole piece for private schools, and it's really restricted private schools that can receive public tuition. And you must have at least 25% of your students in your private school come from a town sending tuition, and here's the big thing, is your private school must be located within a school district that tuitions some of its kids. So there was an article either on Digger, or I think it was actually in Digger, about how Rice and Mount St. Joseph's and Rutland, they can no longer accept tuition students because Rutland City provides education for pre-K through 12, so it doesn't tuition any, and the Burlington School District does the same.
So you can supplant funds.
Well, it's not about supplanting, but it's about you can't, where you're physically located, there has to be a district, there has to be some tuition happening in that school district. And so what it did is there were over 100 schools that were receiving tuition dollars in and outside of the state of Vermont, and brought it within the state of Vermont and cut it down to a list of about 18. That list was just created this summer. So there's about 18 private schools that can accept public school tuition. And that it gave a grandfathering clause to anyone that was already in a private school to be supported throughout the rest of their education. There are a lot of reports and special education work, and the other big thing is a foundation formula that it gave, and it's really going to start at, there can be a 10% variance in the first year, but within 5 years we come down to 5% variance between the amount of money per weighted student. And they set that at $15,033 adjusted for inflation annually by the secretary, but that's already been said by many of the legislatures and the governor. They want to re-look at that number this legislative term. And so that does not affect this year's budgeting for FY 27, but we're pretty close to that, so we want to look at that number as we move forward. And what I'm looking at right now, I should have told you, I'm looking at the VSBA legislative report that came out on June 20th, 25 as one of the attachments. It just has a really nice, I was just looking at the headers, I skipped some of them, but I was just thinking that was a good way to kind of give you some talking points around this. There's many details or pieces, and if we don't have them, we can find them. I will tell you the superintendents were probably at least monthly, if not soon. We're going to be starting every week back to our weekly meetings on this, just to keep abreast of what's going on. And I have resources between VSBA that you have access to and VSA to, if you have a question that we don't have an answer to, we can find it for you. So, and give you all that as a primer for what brought this forward. I hope to know that kind of gives that piece, but I just didn't know where we were as a board, and I don't think we have to make a determination tonight, but I just didn't know if we had anything as a board.
So the question is, what do we support? Do we support districts? Do we support going back supervisory unions, going back to what we were with the multiple boards? Do we support the current process? And are we united in that support? And if we are, do we want to go public with that support? That makes sense? Did I say that right?
Yeah, and I think, or is there no feeling of the board as well?
Yeah, so this is sort of, some of this came up with the chair of the, and it's not called MBU anymore, but that board, contacting me and wanting to get together to see if we can come up with a collaborative position. And then we had talked about getting the superintendents to come together, so the 4 superintendents with the 4 board chairs to sort of put together a position. And then when Bill and I talked about all that, it's like, do we want to have a position? Is that advantageous to us? Or is it disadvantageous to us? Or something else? You know, we don't have to have a position right now. I have a gut as to where this board's at, but I don't know for sure. And I also don't know for sure if we should state that position if we have it uniform. Any comments on that?
I have a question. We were talking about the 12 points that they're covering, and the 12th one being community involvement, and the board being the group being split on community involvement being part of this. Mm-hmm. How much effect would our stance have if they're not? Because we're still considered community. We're not. My thought is, if we make a statement, does it have an effect to the decision, or is it just an action we're doing to put our case up? Does that make sense? Like, does it have an impact if we stand as a board, or is it just going to be read and put to the side and not even being considered if they're not taking community involvement as one of the
Well,
12
they added it to one of the 12. It's not one of the pieces in the legislation.
Yeah, but you're saying that not all of them are willing to,
Well, I was literally watching an hour
Yeah.
having a debate.
yeah, that's what I'm
Whether they
saying.
should do it or not. And it wasn't that, I know some of the people that were saying not to do it were adamant about public engagement, but they were reading the legislation.
And that's the thing, is like how much of effect will this have? Because they should be going through legislation what the legislators put forth, not, I believe community engagement is amazing and very important in this stance, but will they uphold the community engagement going forward? That's my question about making a stance on this.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, we don't know.
So, if I could say something, Gilda.
Sure.
I don't really have an opinion because I don't know enough information about what they're designing. My feeling is that we have a pretty nice school district. And if it comes out that we kind of stay the same, I mean, it appears to me that the most logical thing is we're going to be in the middle of something, but similar to what we have right now. But if they like split us apart or do some other crazy thing, I've also heard from either Digger or 7 Days, and I forget where, that some districts are getting together and forming like they're already like almost planning a rebellion, like they're gonna merge themselves and not wait for this task force to finish their work. So there's all kinds of things like that out there in the rumor mill. But my opinion is hoping to stay similar because we have a pretty nice situation. But who knows what the end result will be. And until that happens, I don't have a real strong opinion because I don't know what the end result's going to be. I'm hoping the end result will be similar to what we have now. And one thing I do know that schools are kind of a culture within themselves, and no matter if you put them in 12 different designs, BFA is going to be BFA, and Fairfield's going to be Fairfield, unless they send Fairfield to another district or something, something crazy. So, but my opinion is to wait and see what they, if it looks crazy, then raise holy hell about it. But if it comes out where we're looking good, then say, oh, that's fine. That looks, reasonable, and, as long as Bill's the superintendent of the whole thing.
Where's anyone else at? Charlie? Where are you at?
I have no particular objection to the idea of some district consolidation, but I'm very, very worried at how they're going about it. We passed a resolution when this was going, asking them to please pay attention to evidence-based research, which I don't really, having followed this to the extent that I can, I haven't really seen any of that, and I don't really get the feeling that they're listening to educators or people in education. Having the construction allocation there is a good idea, but they don't have any money actually put into it. Conceptually, I like the idea, and in practice, I think that I'm very concerned about the ways that the way that our legislatures are going about this.
Thanks, Charlie.
Nilda, can I say one more thing?
Sure.
As a former educator, I'm for what's good for kids, not what creates a system that's cheaper. So if the focus is money, that's not good. I believe we should do the best for kids using common sense in how we spend the money. You know, and there are ways of being smart about spending and the costs and so forth, and that's important. It's important to the taxpayers and all that. But the focus of education, the main focus should be what is good for children and what creates the best education. You know, if the focus is how can we do this cheaper, I'm not really for that. So that's my nervousness about it. And Charlie kind of reminded me when he said, we have, you know, construction aid, but there's no money there. I mean, that's the...
To add a little bit to my concern, in watching the actual passage of the bill, one of the senators in the debate filed said basically the equivalent of we have to do something over and over, or we're going to get voted out. And I don't think that's a good...
Not a good motivation.
That's not thinking really of where things should be. Now, that's one senator, one voice in a very lengthy debate, but it's one of those moments that kind of crystallizes my concerns around this.
Thank you. Mary Ann?
I echo Jack on a lot of things. I think the focus should be the kids, not whether you keep your job or not. And if we can wait and see before we speak out as a board, that would be better.
Thank you. Amanda?
Yeah, I don't feel like it's up to me personally, I guess, or the board to say anything now. I mean,
We don't know what we're
don't
looking
want
at.
to get ahead of ourselves. I mean, I don't know, I wasn't here when we were on our separate, but I don't know.
How about you, Jess?
I don't have a strong opinion. I mean, I feel like change is always unnerving because you don't know what's going to happen and if it's going to be better or worse. I did listen to one of the VPR segments. I don't know if it was the same one. I wasn't paying close attention to the names, but the people who were speaking were like a former principal and a former superintendent. I mean, people who have experience in the Vermont school system. So I'm open to, I mean, Vermont's losing people. If we're going to keep services at the level that we like and enjoy, we have to do something. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to keep things the way they are and keep serving kids. So I'm definitely open to what changes they come up with and then evaluating.
Yeah, thank you. Nakuma?
I think one of the things we need to think about a lot is, at least the legislative aspect of it, a lot of it with legislation, it's very theory-based. Like, this should work, but in practice, it's not always the same. And I hope the legislator is like thinking that, because it looks ideal the way they're going, but we don't know how it's actually going to be effective. And that's my biggest concern is paper is one thing, practical is another, and to see how that affects.
Thanks. Joanna?
Oh, she's like,
You're up.
I also have no strong opinion either way. I think I'm looking forward to see what kind of comes out before I make any strong opinions.
Thanks, Carly. I didn't miss you, I skipped you on purpose, but that's okay.
I know, I was like, I think I should call Joanna, but that's okay. I'll take a turn.
Okay. So I absolutely want to do what's best for kids. I am of the belief that there are ways to become more efficient. I also think that there are costs that drive cost-driving situations that make it unmanageable and unaffordable, that maybe the legislative body could focus on, that have to do with healthcare costs and different monopolies that we have here in Vermont, whether it be about transportation, whether it be about food, school food. So there's ways that we can impact large costs rather than reconfiguring all of this all over again, because it's also a tremendous amount of time and money that goes into all of this. And we were sold originally with consolidation that we would just save so much money. And did that come true? No. So I think that there's only so much leeway that people like Brianne have, but we could use support and help with driving down some of those costs that make it unbearable, that make it just so high and unaffordable. So, to me, that's where the time and the efforts should be focused on. But I do believe that there are ways that we could perpetuate the monopolies and work together and become a larger buying group, whether it be as a county or whatever, or look at curriculum or look at training or look at whatever ways that we could get on board. And it would be nice for our students who, really move around a lot, primarily within the county, to be able to go from like curriculum to like curriculum. So those things I'm not opposed to, and I think those things are best for kids. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks everyone. I agree with mostly everything that everyone said. It's good to be last. No, I think, is it Act 73? Was
Act 73, yeah.
So when Act 73, the Consolidation Act came into play, I was adamantly against it. I was very vocal in that position. And yet, here we are, and I don't think it was that horrible. So, sometimes we are afraid of the unknown, as someone said, and that's natural. So I think we need, I hate to say we need more information because we're inundated with information right now, and it's hard for us to keep track. But when Bill went over those bullet points on that June 20th report, I'm thinking to myself, who the heck is going to monitor all that? Who's going to keep track of it? There's like 5 bullet points after each header, and there's like 25 headers. And it's just so complicated, and it seems sort of overwhelming as a big task. And they say eat the elephant one bite at a time, but that's really big, I think. So I guess I'm in the let's wait and see a little bit and see if we get any more information that helps us become more definitive in our position. Thank you.
Can I say one more thing, Nilda?
Sure.
I said it, but I just want to be clear. I guess the things that I would be on board with making a statement about would be about finding ways to lower healthcare costs, finding ways to lower transportation, finding ways to lower, not lower food costs, but just to be more efficient, or creating buying groups in order to reduce some costs. Because I guess the one thing that I am concerned about is that if we just sit back, Sheldon sat back and waited, and then a forced merger happened. So I think that if we don't provide some hopes and dreams about what it is that they focus on, maybe they'll be focusing on things that we won't results in benefits.
Thank you. Does anybody have a second thing they want to add to their first thing else?
I've got one more,
Okay,
sorry.
that's your fifth thing.
My main concern is that these are all good, well-intending people that are trying to do the right thing and design some new system. But when it all said and done, there's going to be a ton of stuff they forgot or they didn't think about. Or, you know, whatever a new model car comes out, most people wait until the third year because the first and second year, oh, the tire fell off, oh, the steering wheel comes off, you know, or whatever. So my concern is there's going to be a lot of afterthought. And have these folks thought about, if you start moving kids around, how expensive is it to rebuild schools or to add on additions and all that? And so when Charlie reacted to yeah, they're going to have construction aid, but there's it's zero balance right now, you know, so that's kind of scary because I think there are going to be all kinds of hidden expenses that people didn't think about. And so I'm worried that the whole thing at first is going to cost more than people realize. But that's just a worry I have.
Thank you. Jacoby and Ellie, do you have anything you'd like to comment regarding this topic?
Yeah, I guess I kind of echo like the putting people over profits. I feel like, you know, just the thought that they are split in deciding whether to include community voice. That's kind of unsettling, I think. Like, how can you be split on including Vermonters' voices? Each one of them represents 66,000 people. So they have a lot of power in that. So I think, you know, including things about like being like, we need community engagement, we need student voice, we need authentic student voice, and like inclusion of that, reaching out to people. You know, I think it's great that they're doing it from the Northeast Kingdom, which is kind of up and out there, but really getting to like those places that people aren't going to be engaged as much, because those are the people that are affected. Those are the people that move around a lot. And I think just the idea of like, yeah, so I forget what it was. I had another thing, but I think, yeah, it's like putting the people and the students over the profit. It's where did this 8,000 number come from? I think there's some things that when you listen to the community and you listen to more professionals than just the few people that are in the room and have those free speaking rights inside of that, then you kind of, you'll have a little less bumps in the road as you move in, the more people you listen to.
Thanks. Ellie?
I mean, I'm not entirely well versed on everything, and I also like don't pay taxes, so I'm not entirely sure how everything works. But I really like what Jacoby was saying right there about putting people over money, but then again, I am not entirely sure where it goes or how it all works. So.
You just wait when you get that.
In fairness.
Neither do we.
Thank you. Well, I think we all agree that we don't have a position right now, and certainly we don't have a position that we want to go public with. So that's one thing. Bill, do you have anything more you'd like to add to this?
I would just like to, and Aaron can kind of put it down the bottom for a future agenda. I heard some, as people spoke, I heard a couple of you talk about this, and I've heard in other meetings of maybe we should be inviting in our local reps and senators somewhere in December to have a conversation with them, with you and the board, and talk about this or anything else. Marianne, you said it several times, you know, how do we get our reps and senators to come in and have a conversation with us about this? Because that's where the determination is going to happen. It's not by the task force. They're just recommending. So, and you keyed that, Joanna, when you were talking about, well, there's other things I'd like to tackle that I think seem more important to get the costs under control.
Okay.
They share. Yep.
Thank you. Great, so we're under old business still. B, we have, I'd like a motion to approve policy A01, board member conflict of interest, and F05, behavior threat assessment this is their second reading, so this is for adoption. Can I have that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thanks, Jess. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? Ready to vote on the motion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Abstentions? Perfect. Motion carries. Item 7C is the Northwest Career and Technical Center Building Trades discussion. And you have attachment 7C. And I guess, again, it's Bill.
Yes, at the last meeting, I promised we would come to this meeting with a capital fund balance and just talk to you about a couple of costs. We haven't gone out to do much more of the estimating. I will let you know, Leanne's working not only with the instructors, but also with the advisory group for the building trades, and Laz Gangus is working with them as well to understand the code pieces. So I asked Bree, and Bree chip in here, but you did this report, so to do a report where we are with the capital fund, and maybe you can explain the difference between like what's spent and what's encumbered, and how we kind of sometimes we end a project, what we do there.
Definitely. So in July of 2024, we had a beginning balance of about $10 million, a little bit more, in the capital fund. And then throughout the fiscal year of FY25, the board has authorized about $5.2 million worth of capital fund expenditures. Of course, some of these numbers are high and some of these projects are still ongoing. Therefore, it's not completely reconciled right now. But that's just what has been approved by the board, you guys. So looking at it, we have about $5 million remaining as a balance. And then just a little bit down below are extra funds that we have that we haven't utilized for quite some time, but they're just sitting there accruing interest for us. But one thing I do want to point out, which will come up as a topic a little bit later on, is that we have a little over $900,000 in the food service budget still available. But that's just a little tidbit for a little bit later in the agenda.
Thank you.
The thing, as Bree said there, those, what you see in red, some of those are going to true up pretty soon here because those projects are coming to an end. So that we always have you authorize more than what is the estimate. So in case something runs over, we don't have to come back to you. We don't do far over the estimate. We try to keep it close, but as those get closer, we'll true those up more.
Yes, absolutely.
Was there a question there? Yeah, okay. So we're at about 5 million. I will tell you next year, we have some major projects already on the books being engineered. One of them is at Collins Pearly for air handling systems there that you approved in this summer's work for the engineering for next summer to be done. The other one that might be $1 million worth of work. I don't think it'll be that high actually. But the big one is Town School. Town School has 2 wings that don't have air-conditioned spaces, especially B wing, upstairs in B wing. We can get above the OSHA regulations for that are allowable for office spaces, and that's where we qualify under for code. And so we need to get air conditioning, or at least air tampering in those areas to bring the temperature down. And that's a multi-million-dollar project. The engineering, I just saw the plans yesterday, and it's just very complex. So that can be anywhere in the $3 million range for Town School.
One thing is, I had classes up in there with the no AC,
Yeah.
and it definitely made it a lot harder to focus when it was so hot and like all of the fans were going. But it did get quite hot up there.
Yeah, we know that's our next place to tackle. And so that's kind of on the books. We're engineering that right now. We'll have some estimates this fall for those projects. For a total reconstruction of the building trades building, and this is done just by a square foot cost for a pole barn building with a concrete floor, is around $2.5 to $3 million, give or take. Probably $1 million, because we haven't made construction drawings or anything to send to an estimator. The other price that we gave you the last time we were here was the possibility of leasing. There's about $1 million fit-up cost probably of any building we're going to go into that we've only checked out to, and they're at about $150,000 a year. The reason I give you these figures now is in the next meeting or two, we're going to need some direction from the board on where to start doing work. And because I don't want to start spending consultant, architect, and engineer time without knowing, like, you want us to, would you rather have us going into the point of, hey, there's a shorter upfront cost if you go into a lease, but you're putting money into a building you don't own, and you know, after about 20 years, 20 to 25 years, you get to that cost of what the cost for the new building would be. You know, we'll get a better idea of what it would cost to renovate the building trades, but I think we heard from last year with all the code issues that are in there, it means almost a total rebuild of that building because of bathrooms and ADA accessibility. And we don't even know how to get to the building because the parking lot is not ADA accessible. The grade is too steep. So those are issues that I don't need an answer tonight, but I do want to warn the board we're going to need to have this discussion soon so we can start looking at alternatives.
We were talking about this building for a while, hot and heavy, and then it just kind of went away.
Yeah. We're enduring this building right now, just because of all the stuff that's going on with the governance.
Okay, I thought that there was concerns or potential concerns of health.
We try to remedy that as much as we can. We still have concerns on that. I don't have a good recommendation for the board because of what is happening with the governance structures in Vermont. I do when you're talking about buildings that are going to be the school themselves. But you need to. And the other part that's hard about this is the governance of CTEs. That's on the legislature. They say they're going to tackle this year. They keep not tackling that issue. Is it going to be one district in the state? Are they going to stay in the school districts?
Right.
Yeah.
So we talked about not knowing when and how we would make those decisions without that information.
Yeah. I understand that, and that may be a position of the board that we don't want to tackle that until we know that, but I want you to understand the impact. What it's doing, where this year we're able to have classes in the building. We don't have any classes upstairs. We have the downstairs part of the building. And we could, the board could say, we want you to stay in that configuration until we know the CTE. Those are all possible things. I just need help from this board helping us set a direction. And I don't want to spend a bunch of architect and engineer dollars until we try to do that. We did, and that I'm just trying to be responsible and understand where the board's at.
Right. Well, when will we have more information about the CTEs?
At the earliest, probably the end of the next legislative session.
So
they've been trying to tackle it for 5 to 8 years now.
maybe we could be more educated on what the possibilities
For
could
the
be.
CCT? Yeah, we can have Leanne. Leanne's right on top of that.
just so,
Yeah.
as we're, it's hard to
Yeah.
make a decision about
Yeah,
something.
no, I hear you, we can do that, yeah.
That'd be great,
Yeah.
thank you.
So the current building could house how many students? Do you know that?
I don't know that with going, I'd have to go back up to what the occupancy that's on it. It's at one time, so like we could have, let's say the building can, well, I don't even want to say any numbers here. But whatever the occupancy load is, the occupancy load for that one time. So you could have 25 kids in the building and a new 25 come in, and that's servicing 50 kids, but it's at different times of the day. Because what we get for occupancy means how many total can be in the building at one time.
We have a meeting there, I believe, it's our second meeting in October. Is there any way we can take a tour of the building to have
Yeah.
more visualization of what we're
Yeah,
making a decision on?
yeah, we can do that. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure Leanne.
Yeah, because we've seen pictures.
Leanne would be glad.
Yeah, we've seen pictures, but it's very different seeing in person than like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could you remind me, the capital funds, is that something we build into the budget that gets
No, we
approved?
don't. What happens, whatever is, I'll let Bree do that. You want to explain how the capital funds get allocated?
Yep, so.
Not allocated, but how it gets funded.
Yes, so the capital fund is funded through the excess revenue, or the excess money that we have over from the budget. So, like last year, we allocated, or we had $844,000 that rolled into the capital fund, and then we can use that money because we can use it for capital expenditures. That has to be voted on annually by the taxpayers, where they say, yes, we will allow the excess revenue to go in, or excess funds that we have, not revenue.
So since our budget was tighter this year, do you anticipate less?
We're actually anticipating more.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
yes,
From FY '25.
yes, from FY
Right.
'25.
So this year, we'll see what happens.
Yes.
So this capital current fund does not include the overture of FY '25.
Can you repeat that?
So this
Sorry.
what you've sent us for the capital reserves,
Yep,
it doesn't include FY '25, that's going to be voted on in March, right?
correct.
Okay. Okay, so-
No, that's FY '26. If there's leftover money in FY '26, that's what would go into the capital fund. So the money that we have this year, that we just ended with in June, that money will go into the capital fund. Yes, yeah,
Oh, in addition to what we see here?
correct.
And do you know how much amount that is?
I'm estimating, is this okay if
Yeah.
okay, we're estimating about $2 million. Yes,
That's helpful, thank you.
yes, absolutely.
Any idea when we will get an estimate on how much the AC, the safety AC?
So they're engineering that right now, and they're hoping to put that out to an estimator. What I talked with last gang was yesterday, they're hoping to have that estimator early to mid-fall, which to me means October-ish. Because we want to go out, we'll be bringing to you the project to say, hey, we want to go out for bids on this. Or his hope was to go out for bids in late November, early December.
And the reconstruction option that you mentioned, that's the tearing the building down and rebuilding it option?
Yeah. And Laz has told me he estimates to rehab the buildings about the same as to tear it down and rebuild it. Because there's just so much that has to be done. They're gonna have to. But there may be a good idea that comes out of either the advisory board or others that say, hey, we thought of it this way. That's why they're having those discussions.
And last time there was mention of adding a second floor to NCTC, is that?
That'd be, probably not. But we didn't stop any brainstorm options.
Okay, so that's more of a pie in the sky if we.
I don't know how expensive that would be. I mean, I think that would, to me, it seems like a pricey option.
So it's not on the short list.
It would be on mine.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to new business. Sorry. So, monitoring discussion. So you received some documents in your email over the week, I think you got them all the same day, talking about monitoring. And they were from the VSBA Essentials book that is used as a training guide for school boards and others. And one of the goals, at least for me, and maybe Bill, was to sort of get down to basics, kind of like start back at basics and really discuss what is it that the board monitors, what is it that the superintendent monitors, and what is it that others monitor. And at the end of the last meeting, we were talking about that reflections form that we're using to document our observations when we go to different events, and it came up that most of those events are, fun events or whatever, band concerts, musicals, paint art stuff, and that we're not reviewing some of the more classroom-related things. So we decided to kind of, like I said, go back to basics. So you have a document that says, what do we monitor and what are the roles and responsibilities of monitoring. I don't want to read the documents to you because I know you've all read them and I know you're familiar with them, but we should talk about it a little bit so that we're all on the same page regarding what it is we're doing. So, based on that intro, it's hard to kick the conversation off here. One of the things that I want to mention too in this conversation is that we don't have the ability, because of FERPA laws, to just casually go into the classroom and watch, teacher X teach the students math that day or something. Because the other thing is we're not monitoring individuals and their performance, right? We're monitoring outcomes of that performance. So we're looking at data that comes across the whole year or semester, or whatever portion of time we're looking at, and see if we're getting students, what they need to have based on benchmarks that were set for those students at those grade levels by us, maybe, or an outside agency. We can benchmark against ourselves or we can benchmark against other agencies. But we have to remember that FERPA law. Just like in healthcare, you have the HIPAA law. You can't talk about anything outside the job-related stuff. That occurs also in classrooms. And then some of the data that we looked at indicates that it actually puts people in an uncomfortable environment if somebody just comes in and looks at them while they're teaching. Now, some of you may have been around long enough, maybe not, but there used to be a time when teachers had observation day, and whoever their evaluator was would go into that classroom and evaluate their delivery of education for something, right? I remember that. I'm right, Bill?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the jokes that I was on board then, and one of the jokes that the board had was, who the heck's not going to be their best on the day that they announce to you that you're going to come visit you? We would all do that. That's human nature. We want to give our best lesson. We want to, be perfect that day. So I'm kind of rambling all over the place, but you want to help fill in a little bit here, Bill?
Well, I think the thing to think about is on page 52 from the learning outcomes, they talk about 3 different ways to monitor. And so they talk about a report from the superintendent, you've been getting those. External reports, for me, the easiest example is actually the auditors give you a report every year. And you hire the auditors. And then the last one is inspection by the board. And I think when you look at the inspection from the board, it talks about some of the things we talked about last meeting, about student performances and written work, student samples of work, and capstone projects or presentations of projects. And just as you said, Nilda, the role of the board is not to judge individuals, but look for trends. And then the last sentence is the last two sentences, it can be challenging to collect this information in a way that's not disruptive, and the significant risks in this process can become personalized and difficult to use at a level appropriate. So I think it's not saying not to do it, it's just like be cautious in how you do it. And so I know one of the things I heard from the last meeting was, what are other things that we can see that aren't co-curriculars? So I brought a list tonight of just going to the school district website under events. I know we've shown you before, and we'd be glad to show you again, that if you go on there, on the school calendar, and this is literally was printed off this morning, and I would tell you that we missed 2 events on here that have co-curriculars, so I'm sorry we didn't take those off as we were making the list real quick. But there's, I'll let this pass around, but this is just for 2 months. This is for September and October. And so taking public pieces, and I started to think about some of the goals, like a lot of these have community connections to them, but you can see other student work. And I know at open houses you can see student work when you go to those type of things. Especially as we get later in the year, this is September through October, when you see things like the Harvest Night up at Fairfield is a good example of student work. They show a lot of that. The things that I left on here that are co-curricular that I didn't take off was, that I should have taken off, is the BFA Fall Concert. That's one, you talked about co-curriculars in arts. And the other thing that's on here is BFA. It doesn't say homecoming game, it just gives the date. But there's a lot of activities that our kids are doing out in the community those days as well, for the community pieces. So it's trying to think about those pieces and then talking about how do we get that data in a way that gives the work that's connected to the goals, but at the same time isn't disruptive to the system. Yes?
Yeah, I was thinking about this after our conversation, and I'll make a admission that I've never filled out a form, but I've gone to many events, but it's just felt like I've never been to a bad event.
Yeah.
Like, they're all positive,
Yep.
except for maybe like a rogue parent at a sporting event, but that's not the fault of the school. And so it feels like, I don't want to say like a waste of time. I mean, we should be observing these things, and if we see anything that's negative, talk about it. But I really liked the indicators in that essential work of Vermont school boards on page 54, where it's looking at are there, at the bottom, the other indicators? What's the after-school program participation? I would rather know how many kids have an activity they feel is important, that they want to give their time to. What sort of innovative projects? I mean, there's a bunch on here that, to me, do seem more meaningful or indicative if we're being successful.
And that helps me, just you saying those two. If I knew from the board as a collective, you look at this list and we're not giving something on there, that helps me think about, okay, so how do we get you that information? Or get to observe that?
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm not saying you're not giving it to us, but,
no,
but if we picked some of these as a board and we had that data, that would make more sense to me. But.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And my intention I have zero intention in going in and monitoring teachers and going to classrooms and watching students. I mean, it's not what I'm asking to do. What I originally asked to do was to look at the indicators and look at the 5 areas and come up with things that we could be doing. It might even just be an email that we get from school. I mean, that's like literally what some of my things were emails, were posters that we're seeing, you know, especially about student engagement and family engagement, how we're reaching out. You know, what can we tick the box in terms of looking at our website. So just how can we do it other than, you know, talking about, and with all due respect, you know, like another, you know, musical event, because that's not the point. We are not meeting the objective of what it is that we're, you know, what we were trying to do. We were trying to come up with ways that we can monitor each of those areas. So could we just kind of create, so these are some more great events that occur that people can go to, but it's not going to give us the information that we're looking for, or the gaps of information that we're still looking to make sure that we are monitoring. So I think the indicators and going through those 5 areas and maybe even linking some of the indicators to those 5 areas, right? And just thinking about what are the other ways that we can meaningfully provide feedback.
So in the strategic plan, in the 5 goals, each of them have evidence linked within there. So, and I'm responding to what you said, Joanna, is to say, maybe it's a work session. I don't know, there's a lot on the agenda for next board meeting, but within the next couple, to sit down and just say, let's look at this. Let's look at the evidence that's stated in the plan. Because that's what I'm getting from you and from both you and Jess, is there a way to make sure we're getting some of this information?
Well, and also the goal could be like, all right, we see this in 20 areas, but really our goal is to see it in 60 areas. I have no idea. I'm just putting out, you know, ideas. Like, I see this, we see this demonstrated in 3 different ways, but really the goal for the year or the 5-year plan would be to see it demonstrated in 20 different ways, right? So how, because otherwise, how do we know that we're making improvements on those things? So where do we see those things happening, and where would we like to see improvement? Or where are our gap areas, and where would we like to see improvement? And could we look to find, because maybe there are ways that we're doing that work, but we haven't even identified it yet, you know? So just think about how we can find it, because people are doing things, right? All over the district. Is it being documented? Do we know? And then if we find something that we like, could we not expand that in you know, some of the other schools?
So you guys are suggesting we remap the indicators to the strategic plan and verify that we're looking at the right things? Is that what I'm hearing?
I think that's just that we're looking for the right thing, but to include more in what we're looking at. I think as we all go to similar events, we're all seeing the same things, and this way we can see a broader picture of what's happening, and not because I feel like we get presented. Remember at the end of last school year, we were presented more in depth on students' levels, and kids were struggling, and that was a wonderful presentation for us to break it down, not just kids at level, but like the range of levels. And I think this list of indicators is a great way to kind of expand what we're currently being presented on, and add in a few more things. So I don't think we want to change what's being presented on, but maybe just either go more in depth or broaden a little more the area that we're in.
Yeah. So I just want to state that the way I see this step that we want to take, I see it as a reaffirmation of what we've done, and maybe add some things to it, because part of that whole process we did with the strategic plan and the mapping it to the goals was, I think, what we're going to do.
Yeah, well, in the strategic plan, it says for evidence to judge the goals by.
Right.
And so.
Right, and this is one area. This isn't really hitting, you know, all of the areas. Maybe it's 2 areas. Some of the areas are not being hit. We can't find evidence in some of these areas, in some of these events.
Yes, that I would agree. There's some events that you can't find them all. Yeah, and I don't think that, I don't think there's one way to collect evidence for each of the goals. I think there's multiple ways. And that, for me, it's about, when I think about the board, it's about measuring the outputs. Are we getting there? And so what's the measurement? And that's what it says in the plan. So I think it's good to bring the list, either this list or a different list, and look at the plan and say, this is what the plan's saying. That was adopted by the board, as that's the plan and that's the evidence measures. Doesn't say we can't add more to it, but we have to have those at least. And then say what other pieces of evidence could we have.
Yeah, it'd probably be a good refresher to go back and look at the plan and see what we're using as indicators.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
if we want to expand.
Yeah, because I was talking literally in here Tuesday to the leadership team about the monitoring reports. And we were talking about who's doing the reports, and because we always, as you know from last year, we had teams come and bring those to you so you'd have a nice cross section. And we were talking about bring more, plus we'll bring the quantitative data, but I said, I think the board would like to hear more of the qualitative, the anecdotes of what's going on that's helping those goals move forward, and what's not. So, but it would be good to have that discussion before we get too deep into monitoring reports. So we can help bring that evidence. Okay. That helps me a lot. That helps me to help bring you what the board wants to see. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yep.
So we'll plan on that for a future meeting.
Yeah, I think it'll be October, the first meeting in October. So I know next meeting we have a couple of reports coming to the board.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, 8C, first day enrollment report.
Yes. So attached in here is the first day enrollment report. And we have seen a downtrend in students. This has been projected. You know that every year we work with the New England School Development Council, and they do enrollment projections. They've been actually projecting for the past couple of years what we're seeing this year as an enrollment trend. And they were projecting their enrollment projection. It's shown a downturn first in the elementary schools before we get to the high schools. And we see a big change this year in first day enrollment. Now, first day enrollment is the first day of school. I want to caution everyone, it's not what's used for sending reports to the Agency of Education. We do that on the October 1 enrollment. But there isn't a big difference. Aaron and I look back in the history, and there isn't a big difference between our first day enrollment and October 1. It might be 1 or 2 percentage points, but not. And remember, when you have 2,500 kids, 1% is 25 kids. So is that meaningful? Yes, but it's not huge. And I will say from last year to this year, we have 75 fewer kids at first day enrollment. And I actually had Aaron pull the enrollment today to see what the differences were from first day to today. Today's the 5th day. And the only place that there's a major change is in ECP. But other than that, it's 1% up or down. BFA actually has lost 3% since the first day, but that usually happens when kids unenroll from high school. That we had planned to show up from high school and then didn't show up. And so we've gone down in that, you'll see it in that bottom column when you see the year to year to year, we've gone down about 75 students. Nilda asked me yesterday, she said, can you tell me why or where this is happening or what grade levels? And I said, no, we haven't done that level of analysis because we usually wait for things to stabilize in the first week or two. So we have a bunch of analysis to try to figure out where that's happening. We do know at our lower grade levels, you will see in kindergarten, first, second, that we have 160, 155, and 140-ish approximately. I mean, 158, 155, 138. And you'll see in 4th grade it's 145. We used to typically, even a couple of years ago, in those low and K through 8, would have grade levels across the 3 schools of 170. and now we're down in those ranges. BFA, BFA's got an 8th grade coming in of 180 from our 3 towns. That's approximately what last year's was. When you see that jump, that's the tuition students that come from the towns that send us tuition kids. So, city has lost almost 40 kids and town has lost almost 50 kids in 1 year. I don't know why that is, but that's going to affect our ADM, it's going to affect our configurations, it's going to affect quite a bit. If there's something, we are going to do some more analysis on grade levels and what the trends look like and what does last year's 2nd grade look like compared to this year's 3rd grade. We just haven't done that.
Did you just do the 8th grade and the pre-K, just the wash?
Yeah, the wash of that was about, from kindergarten to 8th grade is about 30 down. Because last year's 8th grade was around 180 kids in 3 schools. So, well, that's what we were 70, 170, 180 is what we usually have been having. But we're going to go down to the 150s on average. And you can see that trend as you look across the grade levels. 8th grade's got 180, 7th grade's got 174, then we get into a lot of 150s except for the 3rd grade, we're at 175. So when you start taking those class size numbers we had, you can start to see the classroom numbers and how that could change.
Any question? Any questions for Bill? Other than that?
If you have something you want us to look at or have a thought, please let me know, because like I said, we have to try to dig into this.
So you're gonna look at, like, say, my son's teacher said that class sizes are much smaller than last year.
Yeah.
So last year, we're gonna look, he's in 5th grade, so last year, we're gonna look at the 4th grade to see the difference between how many kids were in his group, in his grade last year.
Yeah, so what I'll do is, like I would do it for SATEC, where your son's at. Let's look at what 4th grade looked like last year and what 5th grade looked like this year. And then I'll do that across, I'll do the whole, that same for each school, but then for the district as well. I won't know, it's hard to get to analyze, like, why do people move out, why do kids move in, that's hard to get. But it's easier to do the quantitative analysis of like how many outs were there and how many ins came in and what happened there. I just don't know the reasons why.
I was going to ask if kids move or transfer disenroll, do we ask a reason why they're because you have to send a report from this school to that school, we don't ask.
We don't ask.
Sometimes.
There's less kids.
The majority of the kids disenroll, especially the lower grades. They're not going to, like, high school stop coming. Most of the lower grade levels, they move, they do it, but the records are transferred with the
Thank you.
Just kind of a historical question, looking at the trend lines, looks like our enrollment's been going down pretty steadily, well, at a gentle slope since FY14.
Yeah.
FY19 and FY20 it ticked up, and the FY19 and 20 are the same. That's right around the pandemic. Is that just because of difficulties in measuring attendance through the pandemic?
It's not really attendance, it's enrollment. There were a lot of kids that disenrolled during the pandemic in 2021. A lot of parents went to homeschool options or kept their kids home. 2021 school year.
Okay.
And we had kids come back.
Okay.
But there's a big jump again from 2024 to 2025.
Yeah.
For homeschool, sorry.
Well, we haven't looked at the homeschool numbers because we get those reports of the kids at homeschool. I don't think they're in here.
Yeah.
No, there.
It's a line in here. It says
74, 82.
it was 2024 is 33, 2025 is 74, 2026 is up to 82.
You're looking which page? Oh, right down there. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to 18, the FY27 budget development plan. We have attachment 18 and Bill. And Bill and probably Bree, somewhere along the way.
Yeah, last year about this time, we had a memo that I included in the attachment that came from the Vermont school business officers, the Vermont superintendents, and Vermont school boards. There was a lot of general data that was given in the nation. They are updating this letter and should have it by the end of the month and have something more and really talk about the impacts of legislation. And talking with them earlier this week, but I thought I would include this because a lot of the pertinent data about what's happening nationally or what's affecting school budgets is still very much the same. The only thing that's not included in here is the consumer price index piece for this year, and we'll get you that. What I did with the cover memo in front was try to talk about some of the impacts that I've known that have happened since that memo that are happening kind of in general. And so I talked federally. There are 4 or 5 bullets here that I think are big things for us to consider as we start talking about how do we want to plan to do budget work as a board. And we have already kind of, Bree and I have talked about the calendar, and it's pretty much the same. We already have what we did last year in the board plan. But I wanted to know if there's anything more or different that this board thought we should do. And so I wanted to go over some of these impacts that we know, because starting in October, we usually start doing more budget type discussions with the board. So I thought it was prudent that we have this now, and that way we can start to plan, so we're not trying to catch up from being behind. So the big thing from the federal, we've all heard about the one big beautiful bill. That resulted in a $6.8 billion reduction in monies coming to K-12 schools across the United States. It's level funding Title I funds and IDEA B, but it's taking most of the other categorical aids and putting it into one lump sum and reducing that amount of money. So when we get money for professional development or English language learners, for innovative programs, what else am I forgetting here, Megan?
Safe and healthy schools.
Safe and healthy schools. All that's going to be reduced down to one categorical aid bucket with not many qualifiers for how you use that money. Haven't seen all the details, so that could change, but there's going to be a real reduction in that. And we can get you how that affects Maple Run.
Will it still have the same rule in terms of federal money? Federal money not being able to match state money, is that what it is? Or federal money can't match federal money? I don't know.
Federal money can't supplant money that was already being spent locally. It's called a supplanting. That I'm sure will still be there. I'd be shocked if it wasn't. I gave nods for the rest of the day.
There's some flexibility, big flexibility.
Well, if you don't, you don't have to document what you're spending it on.
Oh, I'm sure that will be there.
Okay.
Yeah, the Office of Management and Budget that's different. They're pretty clear on that.
Yeah, they do monitor, maybe not to the line item, but they do monitor how much of our pot of money is going towards which types of activities every year. So for each one of the titles, we have some reports that we have to fill out annually for both the federal and state level.
Probably the biggest impact was what the legislature did with the yield bill this past year, where they bought down taxes with $118 million. And so that bought down taxes, that they took one-time monies and put it into the education fund. So what that is actually doing is saying that money is not being planned on unless there's other one-time monies that are going to replace it or increase taxes for FY27, because we're in FY26 right now. The rule of thumb is that for every $10 million is about 1 penny on the tax rate across the state of Vermont. So having to find $118 million either in the ed fund or somewhere else would be about 12 cents on the tax rate. So if nothing changed in the state of Vermont for expenditures, and they had to raise it, everyone would see a 12-cent increase in their taxes for next year. So that's kind of where we're starting with this year. So that's a big piece that's in there, and I think that's one that we're not going to know until the end of the next legislative session. As we always know, those tax bills are the last things they do. They do that every session. Last year we settled an ESP contract for 4% for FY27. This year's a negotiation year for the teacher's contract, so I'm going to need some direction from the board about how we budget for that. We did that last year with you for the ESP contract where you wanted us to kind of budget for that. We'll be talking about that again later on. And then right now there isn't an approved healthcare increase for the Green Mountain Board, unless you've heard of something, Mike, but I haven't heard anything. It's usually in October that comes out. But the increase from last year that we put into the budget was 17%, and just checking with people yesterday that kind of advises on this, they're saying put in the same as you did last year right now. It ended at 12%, but we're being advised to kind of be there. As we do every November, first meeting in November, we come to you with a board and say budget assumptions. How much do we want to assume as we build the budget to just put inflators? So we'll come back, we'll have more data then. But I kind of wanted to let you know these are kind of the things we're seeing right now. I don't anticipate a huge impact from tariffs. That's a question that comes usually because 80% of our budget is salary and benefits. So with the one outside of that is I don't know what natural gas is going to do for us since we all get that from Montreal. If we'll see any effects there. And we heat every building but Fairfield that way. So, but that's a pretty small percentage when you think about that energy cost on our overall budget. Bree, would you add anything, the big things that you've heard going on?
It's been pretty quiet lately, I think, as from the business manager side of things, especially with us rolling over the database and, gearing up or getting into FY26. I know that at our VASBO meeting, we're scheduled to have one in next Friday. So I'll hopefully hear a little bit more then from other people. But it's been pretty quiet.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill.
Do you want me to talk about?
Yeah, I was going to say, Bree, you want to talk about what you did for the final report? I mean, it's not the audited final report.
Right. Yes. No, because we are expecting to have some more invoices slide in. But this is kind of another recap of our FY25 budget versus our actual encumbered amounts. I brought this to all of you in June. I solidified more numbers in that FY25 actual and encumbered. More or less, we're looking at having a surplus of about $2 million, a little over, for FY25. Are there any questions?
Which is about 3% of the budget.
Yes.
A little under that.
Any questions? Okay, B, new business B, E, it's attachment 8E. And I'd like a motion to approve the replacement of the grease traps and flooring at Fairfield Central School as outlined in the concept approval with the project cost to be paid from the food service fund. Have that motion?
I'll make the motion to come in.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Jess. Okay, we have a motion and a second. And you have attachment 8E, and we have Bill and Brianne.
Yeah. Okay. So with the food service funds, we always need to get approval over $25,000 worth of expenditures. And this was brought to us in the middle of the summer that Fairfield was looking to replace their grease traps and their flooring up there. With bringing that to the food service company, even though the flooring is kind of one project and the grease traps are kind of another project with different contractors, the full scope of the project comes out to a little over $62,000. So they told us that we needed to bring this to the board for your authorization. As I pointed to a little bit earlier in the meeting, we have over $900,000 in the food service excess funds. So this is more than capable to cover this expense. I would ask to not have a dollar value attached to it, just approving this concept in case we go to do it next summer and it comes out to be $75,000 due to inflation or potential tariffs if that does come up. But in here you'll see that this does need to get replaced sooner rather than later because the grease traps are deteriorating.
So the numbers here are an estimate, not a quote.
They are just complete estimates, yes.
Any questions, folks? Ready to vote? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed signify by saying no. Abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries. 9, other business. First item is warrants. I'm going to make a motion to approve the warrants. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The warrants are going to go around for signature. Anybody have any questions on anything that's on the warrants? Okay. Then I'm going to call for vote. All in favor of approving the warrants signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. While those are going around, we're going to have the superintendent report.
Thanks, Norman. First, I want to thank Jack and Nakuma and Susie, who couldn't be with us tonight, for coming up and helping at convocation. I think what I've been hearing, and maybe Mike, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I've been hearing people really like the changes we made this year and shorter, and we had some great community help. Ben and Jerry's, as I said, alluded to last time, they helped us out with some ice cream for afterwards, and 2 people that are on the leadership team I really want to thank are Stacy Rulo. She really put together all the details of convocation, and Tim Beans and the Collins Pearly crew, and how they really just keep us going whenever we have an event up there. It really started out as a great pep rally and celebration. I've had many people say we really like that a lot better. We were active, we were doing things. It was just a positive way to start. Megan and I did tours around the building, kind of talking about the state of Maple Run, and I think I sent you that PowerPoint to take a look at. And it really kind of started out, and that's how I would say the whole school year has gone. It's just gone really, really well. And I kind of knew that the first day I was at SATEC I always choose a different school to start the first day at. And the first in the morning I was there, and SATEC is the last places where the bus finish. I think you all know that. And when I saw the buses rolling into SATEC 2 or 3 minutes earlier, I was like, okay, the buses are at least having a good day. Let's see how the rest of the place is going. And just what I've heard from people is it's like the kids kind of know what we're doing. Like the routines have gotten there. They've kind of resettled after everything, the upheaval we had in 2019, 2020, 21. And I don't know, I haven't had a chance to talk to many of my colleagues in other districts, but that's what I'm hearing is like they're getting right into the routines. And I know when I've walked around the classrooms, it's like the kids, they understand what they're supposed to be doing. I saw that today just right up at Fairfield when I was up there this morning, and the kids they were doing school. They were doing their part. So it's it's been just a really, really good feel for me, and I hear that from others, so. I wanted to let you know of a change that's happening. You may have heard this already, but Abbey Group has sold off their school catering business.
Yep, to Whitson's.
To Whitson's.
Yes.
And so that, they have said there won't be any changes this academic year.
Correct.
But we don't know after that. So Brianne's been working with them on that. But that's one thing that they did, is they sold that part off.
Didn't we just approve the contract for 3 years with them?
Yes.
I was just gonna ask that same.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, but the staffing is staying status quo, and they've assured us that the menus are going to stay the same, but they're going to have more buying power. So hopefully this is a good thing. Yes.
We do still have some open positions. We're dealing with some custodial shortages, and in all of our buildings. Right now, probably the 2 buildings that are really affected that are City School and Fairfield. I will let you know we're going to do a short-term contract for Fairfield right now with an outside provider to provide custodial services, because we're down to 1 person up there, out of the 2.5 that we usually have. So that's a big hit. The staff have been tremendous jumping in, but starting on Monday, we'll have an outside contractor in there. We hope not to go along with that. We actually got an application today. It's not something we want to do. We've worked with the association to let them know that like this is not something we want to have our own personnel, but we got to actually help clean the school. And several people are going above and beyond their regular job to help that out. But we do have 6 professional positions that are still open and 10 ESPs. So that we haven't been able to fill. Some of those just changed right at the beginning of the school year, or people that had accepted jobs didn't take them.
So 6 professionals.
6 professionals, yeah. We have, at one place at City School, we had a K-6 teacher opening that we couldn't fill. When we looked at the class size numbers, we actually reduced the classroom. We kept with the class size policy that we used.
And how many ESPMs are?
10. Yep.
And where were we last year?
Greater than we were up in, I know we were in the low 20s without quoting. I know we were in like 22 to 25 area. So, yeah. Yeah. All right. And those are the places there. Gave you the list of things to attend. There's a lot of great stuff going on out there in schools, so please come by. Just public events, the kids are doing great things.
Thank you. Any questions for Bill?
Do you have a response on the no cell phone? What would, just an update on the last 5 days?
Yeah, I will tell you that it's, I heard my colleague across the way here say it, but I'll say it too, that I heard this all over the place. It's amazing how the kids have responded. And I got called out by one of the SVC kids during freshman welcoming day because I had my Garmin on, and I was like, Olivia, you're right. I took it off and I threw it in my pocket. I was like, yep, that's where it's supposed to be. I didn't have my phone on me, so it wasn't going to get any internet, but that's the way we do it. And the kids, they're adjusting. I think the ones that have it the hardest are the juniors and seniors. And for those who are used to using their own computer, they can't anymore. And that's where the legislation went. So, but I hear positive things from the staff. And I know that the administration, basically, the three principal positions, John, Sarah, and Polly, so the 2 assistants, they basically cleared their schedules so they could be available. And they're like, we're not running that much. So, am I missing anything there, Mike?
No, I do want to say, just quickly, that hats off to the students for surprising us with stepping up and sort of embrace it. You know, The seniors are quietly mad, but other than, they're still generally following. I have a senior advisory, and there was silence and, but they're quietly mad because, and I think you're right, it's gonna be harder on those two groups, but I really, you gotta hand it to, we're leading by example and we're modeling, but without their compliance, I mean, there are some, students here, there are some that aren't, but I haven't had 5 days I haven't had a single phone I've seen. And I'm just one of many, but it's remarkable. I had really it was bearing down, and it hasn't been the issue. We talked about it, we brought it up, we laid it out. They saw the consistency of application by the administrators and the staff, and they realized, and the explanation of why it was the best for them. That I think really helped, saying, hey, we're doing this for a reason, we're not just doing this to do it. So it has taken this big weight off of the situation. And but hats off to the students, because without their compliance, we wouldn't get there.
Thank you. Good.
Thanks, Mike.
You set, Bill?
Yeah, I'm good.
Any board announcements?
I've got a son in high school now, and went to the BFA freshman orientation, just to echo what Mike said about, I think every classroom that we stopped in, each teacher, when they were giving their introduction, mentioned the cell phone policy and gave very clear reasons as to why it was good for the students. And also, I think one of the things that benefit is the fact that the cell phones are just in as a zippered case, and they're not like locked or anything like that. So there's a lot of telling the students, like, hey, we trust you to follow this, because we're not preventing it from being able to, well, I mean, part of the reason that there's no lock on it is because students know how to break those locks, but there's a general trust that the students are going to do what's best for them. So.
Thank you. Any other board announcements? Okay, plan for board observations and reflections. We have a plan. Items for future agenda. You've got one on the list, right, Aaron?
Yes.
We don't need an executive session. So we are adjourned. It's 8:05.